Hello, how are you today?
Good. Yeah.
Good. I'm here with Beatrice. It took us a while to get set up, but we did it. A couple of non-technological ladies over here. We got it. So this is going to be a good one. This is my friend Beatrice, and I just wanted to bring her on right away because I think she's so awesome. So I met Beatrice at a clinic, and she already had done some of the circus stuff, actually traveled internationally for circus, and was interested in getting back into the bareback riding and the vaulting. And upon meeting her and having more conversations, I came to her place because I was amazed that she has her horses with her in an urban setting. So she lives in Chicago and she does a lot of outreach for her community as well. So I just wanted you guys to meet Beatrice, really, and let her tell us about all the awesome things she's done and all the awesome things she currently does and all the awesome things she has coming up in the future. So, Beatrice, take it away. Can you tell us how you kind of found me and your past career with the circus and how that transformed into where you are today with Egypt and Clover and all the cool things you offer?
hmm First of all, I should tell you and everybody if you hear like heavy breathing, it's my dogs. They're around me and they're circling and they're panting and stuff. So if you hear that, that's what it is.
That's
Um,
okay. The
yeah.
first episode we had squeaky toys because of Matt's dog, so
Oh,
that's
nice.
okay.
Cool.
All creatures are welcome.
There was like mewing. Someone was mewing at the door right before that. I was like, "Whoa, this is really good thing this is an animal show."
Yeah.
Um, What did you ask me though? Dang it, they distracted me. This is like I feel like I have
No,
animals
it's
as being like
okay.
a mother that can't have a full length thought.
Oh, that's okay. I know because I got four out there right now, and I put Lola outside of the room, even though she doesn't really make noise. Your history with the circus. How did you get into it in the United States, and then how, like, you worked with Big Apple, and then you were overseas. Can
I
you
did.
take?
So I got
And we
really
haven't even talked about that, like your whole journey one on one. So you'll be telling me as you tell everybody else how you got into all that awesome circus stuff, like way different opportunities than I've been used to. And you worked with exotics at the circus too.
I
Can you?
did. So I got lucky. I'd ridden horses some growing up from like I don't know, my mom's from Kentucky, so we would go home to visit her family. So there was always this like we'd go to this like magical land elsewhere. And though her parents didn't have horses, like her dad's brothers did. It was like, when you have second cousins that are like teenage girls, and as a little girl, you like love them, and they would like put you on the horse with them and stuff like that. So I rode
Yeah.
horses. Then I started taking lessons in Chicago as a kid, and I stopped. And then when I was 18, I moved back to Kentucky and I went to school down there. And I was part of the University Equestrian
Oh,
team, and I had to work study at the horse barn, and I was an agricultural major. And I was like, oh my God, I'm scared of riding horses. Like I had taken enough of a gap that then going back to it, I was like, this is terrifying. Like I don't, it was like totally lost that invincibility of youth feeling, not even realizing I'd lost it until I started riding again. And so then someone told me, I left there. I didn't end up finishing the degree. And I met someone that was like, you should check out Monty Roberts, na 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 na. He at the time had like three intern-ish, whatever, people that had like paid for his program in USA. And I wrote to one of them, and she was in Georgia. And I went down and interned with her. And she was just a cool lady. She was like, I don't necessarily recommend that you do like a Monty Roberts program or what. She was just like a horse trainer that I think did it to give herself some more validity, or like be
sure.
like affiliated with like a brand.
So she
And
was promoting not sticking to one philosophy as I understand that, and I do too. I'm like, this is, we don't have to go with one certain philosophy. Just, hey, take your opportunities.
exactly. And so she was really cool. And she had talked about growing up. She grew up in Haiti, and then her family like came back. They were like came back to Florida for a short time, and they were near a circus. and her and her like siblings would go to visit the circus and visit the horse trainers at the circus. So they learned a couple little circus tricks. And so she taught those to me. And I remember at the time being like, this is so cool. Imagine if I could work with horses in the circus. This is so much fun. So I like cold called Big Apple Circus at like the age of 20, being like, hey, are there any internship opportunities? And they're like, no, but we've got a job for you. And I was like, oh, I don't know. How much shit do I want to shovel? That's all I'm going to do. I won't learn. They're like, how about this? We'll fly you up for a trial week. If you don't like it, we'll fly you home. So I like drove my like busted car up from Georgia to Chicago to like get my flight to New York. And I really liked it. And I stayed because the barn was a lot of fun. You know, like the women that worked there, I really liked. I liked working with them. I liked learning from them. I liked being there. So I stayed with Big Apple.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
What kind of act was on the show at the time, and what things were you learning as far as horsemanship goes or any of the specialty stuff?
Mm-hmm. My first year, it was just a straight Liberty act. And the horses had come pre-trained that act. And so none of them were trained any of like the individual components. They were all trained as a group of 6. So I remember one time one of the horses got sick, like had an allergic reaction or something. And like the horses behind him in the group couldn't operate as part of the whole thing because they'd only been trained as an entire unit. None of them had like any of the individual components. So that was something that we then started training that year, was the act to do the following year. And so like teaching just basic, like how to be lunged, not 6 at a time, you know, or not 3 at a time, because often like 3 would turn. So they were like the 2 groups of 3 were used to doing things together. But like how to break things down so that they can actually follow commands, not just like one particular chain of commands. And so that was cool. That was fun.
That is super interesting.
Yeah.
They're 6 pattern animals.
Yeah. And only at the beginning too, only one of the horses knew how to rear. And we trained them all how to rear. And then we trained them all how to rear together. So that was fun. We would have like so many lunges in our hands on both sides to keep them from turning and coming down on one another. Even though we, you know, basically trained them to stay straight, but we didn't want to risk it in the beginning. So we had like an elaborate puppet, like strings in our hands, like so many lunges on either side. We started training one of them to do a courbette. So that was exciting, which I never had trained before or since.
Yeah, I don't have experience with that. I know it's just kind of like a jump up and kick out, or how would you describe it?
Well, the courbette, I think, is like just the jump up and up, right? And is the capriole the rear up and then
yes,
up?
yes.
And I never trained capriole. We might have been trying and ended up with something like a courbette. And I don't think anyone there, even the main lady presenting it, who like had been working with horses for like 50 years and in circus all her life, she'd never done it. And one of my friends too, she said she met, what's that guy's name? LaRoche, that trainer. He's like a French TV trainer. She was working at a circus in China, and she said it was like amazing. And she got to meet this guy, LaRoche, and he was like a really sweet, cool guy. And he was like, do you want to ride a capriole? And she's like a dressage rider, but I'd never ridden a capriole. And she was like, yeah. And she said the horse went up, and as it went up, it bopped her in the nose. So she both got bopped in the nose and fell off. Like as soon as it kicked out, like somehow she didn't expect any of it.
That's awesome. That'd be me.
I
don't know much about high school.
I don't know anything about it. You do. I've seen you canter bareback pirouettes. That's pretty.
Just playing around, but that's my retirement plan. After I retire from trick riding, I'm gonna joust, and then after I retire from jousting, I'll get into high school.
Cool.
But right now, I would be her. So after and how long were you with Big Apple?
Like a year and a half, because I left and came back.
So then what was your next part of your journey?
Oh, the other thing I did with Big Apple was so we each had like there were three of us grooms. We each had horses we were responsible for mainly. And I was like in love with one of the horses I was responsible for. And we groomed them. They were like solid white. And we would make like checkerboard patterns on their butt that you couldn't see unless the light hit it just right. And, it was
All the
absurd.
details.
Yeah, but they were so used to us handling them that they would trust us to like do anything. So since they were Liberty horses, none of them had been ridden before, which was strange.
Yeah.
And so I trained him to be ridden, and that was fun because that was the first horse that I like started from scratch-ish, even though he wasn't from scratch, because he trusted me and he was used to me. So we already had a relationship. And we didn't have saddles or anything. So it was like bareback, starting horses, and they were cool about it. They were really cool. And my friend did that with her favorite horse. So we would just like ride around together bareback, and that was a blast.
Oh,
So,
I'm glad you mentioned that because like last week I was talking about, and after I lay down the science, I want to get into how important the relationship really is.
mhm.
Because I think if it wasn't you, someone just grabbed that horse and said, okay, let's go riding, probably wouldn't have happened.
Probably
But
because he was also like
trusted
a
you.
very, very like high strung. They were all Arabians and they were all high strung, but he was a particularly like high strung, like nervous Arabian. Um, but we liked each other, I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah, we
it
vibed.
clicked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Oh, God, I love those Arabs. They're dancers. They're ready to go.
uh, I do too, but when I was with Egypt, I almost got this Arabian, but I was like, am I gonna ride an Arabian like without supervision, without anything? Because at least then, like I was with my friend and she was a more experienced horse person. And
Hmm.
I don't know, I was 20. I didn't really think about breaking my neck, even though I was like a fearful rider and it wasn't the same. I feel like it's
Yeah,
accumulated since then.
no,
But
I get that. I got one thoroughbred, and I think he's different. He's different than most thoroughbreds, and that's how I'm able to do, I think, the things that I can do with him.
hmm
But we have a relationship for sure. He's not like that with everybody.
hmm
I think that's the same thing. Um, it's interesting because when I have leased him out or someone else has handled him, they were like, he's not good or he's done this, and it was things that I thought they were lying to me.
hmm
Someone tried to trailer load him and they said that he was going up on his hind legs and mouth was open. I'm like, that's not my horse. That is like unheard of.
Yeah.
Um, but you know, with those intelligent breeds like those Arabians and those thoroughbreds, it's like the relationship is so important. It's not a machine, it's a being with
hmm
thoughts and emotions. And I can install all the buttons, but if you don't know how to push them, he's
hmm
gonna test you. So it doesn't matter what me as the trainer does with that horse, then I'm creating that in between me and that horse. And then when he gets handled by somebody else, that's a whole new relationship and they'll have to work out their own dynamics. And it's super interesting that sometimes he gets someone's number and I
Yeah.
hear about it later. um, yeah, but after Big Apple, what what was your next move?
I don't know. I was probably like sort of underemployed for a while doing I don't know what. But then, oh, I think I was doing like caretaking stuff with people, which was actually wonderful in its own way. It was just very different. But then my friend who was like the head groom, and this was a lady that met Larashi working in China and got bopped in the head. And she, I visited her a couple times. She was a really great dressage rider. She's a really good dressage, like classical dressage. She doesn't compete it. She's really
Hmm.
like just a sweet person and like a wonderful animal trainer. And we're also friends. I like working with her. So she called me and was like, hey, I'm working with this circus in Switzerland. She's Swiss. And I need a lovely assistant. I'm presenting like a mixed liberty act. So we had what do we have? We have two halflingers, two camels, and then two llamas and alpacas that came in at the end. And she was like, and we also managed the whole zoo together. And we rotated lovely assistants in other acts. But she was like, I need a lovely assistant. You want to come out and like manage the zoo with me and figure this out? And like, the act was like not quite trained when it arrived. So we had to figure that out. She's like, you want to do this? And I was like, hell yeah, I want to do that. I'd love to.
Yeah,
I went out, and then
that is so cool.
it was so cool. It was like the adventure of a lifetime. But I didn't stay there long because our one day off was Easter and our next day off was going to be Christmas. And I just like couldn't, I was like too bratty and couldn't hack it. And they were like really long, really hard days all the time.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, it just got, I was like, no, I want to go. I was really jealous of like girlfriends that were on tour that had girlfriend jobs, and they'd like spin cotton candy or like sell box office tickets, and we'd be like shoveling shit out of snow because we like moved every couple days with like 60 animals, and that would felt impossible. And I would like watch people like go to like the pharmacy, and I would be really jealous. And so I left there and I got a girlfriend job with another circus, and I instantly hated it and was like, what have I done? Why would I do this? You know?
Oh no. Was that still in Switzerland or?
Then I came back to America. It was with this,
Okay.
yeah. And I was like, oh, I instantly was like, this was a mistake. I've made a huge mistake. So,
I always say us animal people have it tough, you know. And usually when we have the horse acts on the road, we are the only horse act. So we are on a show with other friends and they're doing, some daredevil stuff, or we'll work with some dog people here and there, but everyone's ready to go out, like go get some dinner, go to the bar, and we're like, oh, we gotta feed. Hold on, we gotta clean stalls.
mm-hmm,
Wait, we can't go yet.
mm-hmm.
We got, and I just took care of one. Was it just the two of you taking care of like 60 animals?
No, we had two others. We had,
But that's still four
yeah,
people, 60 animals.
it was
Yeah.
pretty nuts. It was pretty nuts. And with that amount of moving, the tent crew did set up the tents for us. So we just set up like all of our electric fences, our stalls. The wagons were crazy because they weren't quite made for people. Um, or not for people, they weren't quite made for animals. So we would like kind of put fences together to like barricade like the Watusi cows from the camels, from the da da da. And it was crazy. One day, and there was also a language barrier because the two other people working in the stables with us were Moroccan, and they did not speak German or English. And so there was like, we sort of invented our own amalgam language, but then sometimes we'd have errors because of our language barrier.
Mm-hmm.
And so one day something happened, and like one of the nandus, have you seen those nandus? They're like ostriches.
No.
They thought they were all male until they started laying eggs, and they like laid eggs like that big.
Oh my God.
But one day one of them escaped, and it was like we would just like hold fences and like bring them all over together, kind of like walking like a walking corral. And one escaped, and I was like, don't worry about it, don't worry about it, leave it, leave it. And maybe someone was sick, so I think we had this like big Ukrainian guy there too. None of us spoke the same language at all, but it was like, leave it, leave it. But then someone went after to get that, which meant we had a hole in our little moving thing, which then meant that all the nandus got out, which then meant that the alpacas went crazy and burst through their fencing. And then it meant that the camels went crazy and burst through their, I mean, it like set off this chain reaction that was mortifying. And we were like near this highway, and I was like, oh no, if these animals get hit, we can't have this happen. Like the audience was about to get let out. It was like during finale. My friend was like in her princess dress in the finale. I was like, this is terrible. And I ended up like luring them with a bucket of grain, but I was terrified. These animals are huge, and I didn't have that kind of relationship with each of them. So it was terrifying when they were out. It was dark. I could just hear them like as they went around. Like a month after I left, one of my coworkers got kicked by a camel and broke his leg. I was like, it's not, I don't know. It was too many animals. We could have done with like 20, and that would have been cool. And we would have had more time to train, and it would have been, I would have preferred that.
That's amazing. God, I love stories like this. You can't run away with the circus and not have some kind of story.
I was so maybe never been more frightened. That I was like euphoric afterwards. Like when once we got them back in all in, that was like that felt like a miracle, you know.
That's living for you. That's really living. You're not stuck in your desk cubicle all day. You're chasing after all these loose animals in a foreign country. Uh,
We had
while
tigers.
you were there,
Oh yeah, I want to tell you one
tigers.
other thing before I forget. There were tigers
Yeah,
there too.
go
I didn't
ahead.
take care of the tigers.
Love this.
Some other guy did. And I remember people would be like, "Where are you from?" And I was like, "America." And they're like, "You're lying. Americans wouldn't do this. You're Romanian." And I'd be like, "Well, how did I speak English? Well then, like, what are you talking? Like how like presumptuous? You know, you're like weird." Um, but the tiger guy too said something like that to me. And at one place we were at, the tiger cage was right next to the tent. So to take the horses and camels into the tent, we had to pass through. I swear to God, it was about as wide as my kitchen table. It was like 10 feet to pass through with like two camels or two horses as the tigers were leaping at the gate. And that also was terrifying. And I think we ended up like lifting the sidewall and like going under the crowd and bleachers to like just avoid.
That we did that too. I did one shrine date, and it was like the big Thanksgiving one. So it was like 10 elephants and big Cossack act, and there was a couple camels and pony rides and lions. And the lions were just across from the horse stalls. So
It's
every time
terrifying. I was like, I'm gonna die. Like,
every time we would take the horses in and out, the lions lunge forward. Um, the horses kind of shy to the side, and one day the troop leader, he got sprayed by one of the
I
lions. Oh,
oh, they
like
spray.
they spray and they
They
stink.
spray what? What do they
They
spray?
spray. It's like urine. I don't know if it's urine. It's like a scent gland. I should do more research
Oh
before I talk about it.
wow,
They spray something.
something.
They spray something.
I didn't know
And
they did
I
that.
kid you not, though, Fez was less scared of the lions than he was the hogs. He hates pigs.
Really?
And I hear that all the time that horses hate pigs, and I see it
Huh?
too.
Huh?
So he'll take lions and he'll take elephants over pigs. Must be their smell.
Huh.
I think
I
it's their smell.
wonder.
Yeah. Have to do more research on that too. But I
Maybe
did
there's
a
a whole
clinic.
like past life thing that a bunch of horses had something with pigs.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know.
Well, pigs are pretty brutal too, like
Oh,
wild pigs.
oh.
And we did a clinic in Alabama, and my horses were jumping out of their skin. And I was like, what the heck is going on? And just behind the fence was like a little piglet. They were losing it.
Huh?
So something to talk about in the future, something to research. Why pigs and horses? Why are horses so terrified of pigs?
That is weird. I had no idea.
Went out on a tangent there. But while you were there, didn't you do some bareback riding and vaulting training?
Mm, I did that later in France. One of my friends from Big Apple, she was a wire walker at Big Apple. She was, she had been living at this place in France, and she was like, if you really want to do any kind of like voltige or bareback riding, you should go to France. And this is like, this person in France is the best teacher. And she had been living there and like touring with, they had had a circus, like, I don't know, this place was called like the Equestrian Circus Arts place, something like that. And they had had a touring circus with a ton of horses. It was like mostly horse based, but they would collaborate with other people too. It was beautiful. It was really beautiful. And so they had a school, and I went out there for 6 months and I practiced with them.
6 months. Oh, I
Yeah.
didn't know that. That's awesome. Maybe
Yeah.
you have told me that when I met you, but that's so cool.
It was cool. I liked it a lot. But I guess with 6 months, I'd be like, oh yeah, 6 months, you'd be kind of good at that. And no. So that, like, that was not the case. I think people that are more acrobatic to begin with, like improve quickly. But for people that aren't particularly acrobatic,
The
no.
funniest thing is that just yesterday I came home from a clinic, and the end of summer right now has been pretty full of clinics, and I always go in And we go to equestrian centers, so we're not really working with like circus kids. But I always go in and I just tell them like it's easier for me to take an acrobat and put them on a horse than it is for me to take a horseback rider and teach them acrobatics.
Mm-hmm.
I love taking it to the equestrian centers because they're familiar with horses, they love horses, they want to see what else they can do with horses. But they all get up there and they don't touch the reins, they don't tell them what to do. The only thing that's required is, okay, get comfortable being on a horse and understand its rhythm. Because when you're
Mm-hmm.
doing like voltige and bareback riding, you don't have to, like, there's a runner in the ring who's taking care of the horse. You don't have to like know anything about horses. You don't have to be able to stop them or make them go or anything. Just have to have rhythm so you can stand on them, and that's about it.
Mm-hmm.
Seems like.
Well, it also is weird. I wonder if you experience this. I've like come now, I'm like a weird rider kind of because I'm uncomfortable riding in a saddle and I'm exaggerating, but it's become a weird thing where like I don't like my lower leg to make contact. I'm basically just following. Like I feel like I'm like sloppily riding as if I'm a voltiger, but I'm like a lot more comfortable. Like my seat's gotten a lot better because I can just like dynamically follow, but like that's about it. Like, and I don't know, it feels like this also strange hybrid way of being on a horse where I'm like, not quite a voltiger, not quite a rider, but I'm like, well, it's fun. It's a fun way to be up there, you know.
You're good. I've seen videos. You're good. You're better than you think you are. And you do a great job with your horses. Good transition here. So, oh, and I I had my dentist. You
Oh
used the
yeah.
dentist, and she said that your horses were amazing and they didn't need any sedation. And she texted me and said, so here's a good transition into the life of Beatrice in the present moment. My dentist texted me and said, I thought I was getting pranked because of your address. Like she was going to a Chicago address to take care of these horses. And sure enough, there they were. And she just thanked me for hooking you guys up because she loved it. And your horses were great. They were so
They were
good.
good. They're really good. I'm so thankful for them. They were really good. I wonder if this computer would let me bring it outside.
Yeah.
Should we
Oh,
try?
that's true. Well, and you can send me videos and
Ah,
then I will lay it on top of our speak, like
oh,
what we're saying.
I could try to do that as well. We could see.
Yeah, we
Cool.
can do that.
I was gonna
Because I
take
want
you.
to
I was gonna
share.
be like out the kitchen window because we could probably see them from the kitchen window.
We can do that too.
Let's see. Let's see.
So if you're listening,
If it
if you
doesn't work, we'll
watch
just.
it, hopefully we'll get a little tour here so you guys can see how awesome this is.
Okay, we're leaving the kitchen.
And I don't know about
Oh, they're
you, but
hiding.
it's super nice today.
Oh, there she is. It's beautiful here. Can you see her? She's gonna come because
I see her.
I think she'll come out. There she is.
Egypt. Oh, you
And there's
happy
some.
girl. There's Alien.
Oh, Clover's hiding in the barn. He's just
Oh,
doesn't want to leave the shade, I guess.
yes, perfect. She knows.
We'll go back in.
She knows. So Beatrice's horses are in her yard and she's in Chicago. They are amazing. She can take them down the street. There's a train that comes through the yard, which is probably why your horses were, I mean, they're so desensitized. And I love that. Last week we were talking about, and this weekend when I went to my clinic, we were talking about the greatest thing you can do for a horse is teach it to have manners and teach it to be comfortable in this human run world because that's how it is. In utopia, we could let horses be free and go wild, but if we let them out right now, they go into the road, they get hit by a car, or something happens to them. It's 2020 and it's a human run world. And we've been working with horses for a long, long time. That's not going to change anytime soon. So the best thing you can do, because there's, well, if you're me, can't get rid of them and they're your forever. There's a lot of people who buy and sell horses and whatnot, and you don't have control of where they're going to go or where they're going to end up and whose hands they're going to be in. So the best thing you can teach them is to be mannered and comfortable in a human run world, so then no matter whose hands they get in, they have no reason to be, I mean, they should never be neglected, but that's out of your control. They have no reason to be neglected if they can, have manners and be comfortable in someone else's hands in different situations, and and the extreme case would be like an awesome urban environment like where you live. So can you tell us like what you've been up to in your community now that you have these guys in your yard and your new projects? So
Yeah.
shifting topic completely.
So I'd always wanted a horse in Chicago. I'm from Chicago. That's been my dream since I was like a little girl. I grew up across the street from this park and I was like, couldn't we have a horse there? And I have the 2 vacant lots next to my house. So we're on a third of an acre. And a lot of people were like, you can't do that with a horse. That's abuse, da 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 da. So I first had just goats because I like them and they were really comfortable here. And then I got Clover, my mini, and he did really well here. It's just like a very like comfortable, confident, solid temperament. And so since he was doing so well here, I finally thought, all right, let's try with a full-sized horse. And first I was boarding her in the suburbs, and then I transitioned to bringing her here because in the suburbs also she wasn't in more space. There was an illusion of more space with it being surrounded by pastures,
Sure.
but the pastures weren't often open. So then I was like, what am I doing? Like driving out to the suburbs and for her not to have more space than she would have here because I'm operating on the idea that what's here isn't enough for her, even though there is more space here than over there. And she would have an equine companion and he's doing well and he's solid. And with Clover, we've done more with Clover in terms of stuff with the community than with Egypt because he's been here longer. So Clover, we were teaming up with some of the neighborhood organizations when they would put on parties. We were like, could we volunteer? Because our neighborhood's been so supportive of us. And this is the reason that we're able to do something like this, is because if our neighbors didn't want us here, there's no way this would fly. And
Right.
so we were like, what can we do as like a thank you to the neighborhood? So we've done like our block party, which is fun and also crazy because there's like a dunk tank and a bounce house and like a motorcycle gang and really loud music and like bikes going by and all kinds of like crazy stimulus. And Clover's like, I'll do my pony rides. It's pretty cool. I'll do it. It's no problem. I'll do it. And we always have someone
Amazing.
spotting the kid anyway because kids sometimes just droop off, I don't they just like do they kind of just like give up or I don't know what happens.
Oh, I know at work when the toddlers, it's the toddlers when they get up on the lyra or the trapeze, they just love to let go, like without warning. They just let go.
It gives
Oh,
me a heart attack. Sometimes the really small kids too, people really want their child to have like to take a photo with the horse and the baby will be like, okay, cool, 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 baby. And then right as it gets to the top of the horse, the baby will scream or cry and the baby gets pulled away and stops, gets closer, scream, cry, baby, stop, like, and thank God the horses don't react to any of that either. They're just like, we're
it's
here.
like photo with Santa.
Yeah.
Photo with
Yeah.
Clover.
He's a good luck charm. So
He
we did
is.
that and we did a lot of also the neighborhood parties. They were having parties specifically for promoting peace. So there'd be like live music, there'd be free food, there'd be games. It was really well supported and well organized. So I would just put Clover in the back of a minivan, take him over there because they're all in the neighborhood. So it's not like it takes a long time. And they would have a person there to help me like create a line full of kids, like help sort sizes, because I feel like those, it's hard sometimes with kids because I feel like those big kids can't, or I can't even do it based on age because some kids are really fat. So I have to like sort of be like,
Right.
if a kid looks bigger than like what you would think 50 pounds is, then they can't. I've been
Right.
thinking about making something on a scale where like one of those old time scales, where it's just the dial, like you step on, you don't see a number, but like red is no go. So like anything after that would just turn
It's like
red.
the
Yeah.
height thing
Yeah.
for Six Flags.
Yeah.
Oh, that's perfect. And now you got Egypt too, so you can maybe
Mhm.
do the little bit bigger kids.
Well, with Egypt, before quarantine hit, we'd been doing adults. So we would just like go out in the neighborhood and people would be like, can I get on? We're like, yeah. So it's just like a moving tailgate party. And that was euphoric. It would be like all kinds of people getting out of their cars, people that had never touched horses before. Then sometimes they wouldn't want to get on, but sometimes they would. Sometimes they just want to touch, sometimes they'd want to hold her. We did photo shoots with Egypt, like impromptu photo shoots in the street. And that's
That is
been,
so amazing.
it's been really cool. That's been like a party, but it's
And what a
difficult.
surprise. Like they're not expecting that day to just drive down the street and then run in or be walking down the street and then run into you. Like that's that's got to be why you have such supportive neighbors because like what like a rare opportunity.
Yeah, I think everyone likes something that feels like a deviation from your normal day. And if it's something unexpected, it does feel like magic or surreal, or it like takes you out of it. Like even if you would think to be like, I saw a horse today, you'd be like, well, whatever. But if you haven't seen a horse maybe ever, and then suddenly you're confronted with this like size and majesty and like strangeness, and you know, I there's something to it that I didn't anticipate, and that seems like more than the sum of its parts. And Egypt, maybe because she's so golden and large, I feel like when people see Clover, they'll be like, is that a horse? But it's a magical sighting, almost as if you've seen like a gnome. Whereas Egypt, there's something else, like there's like a magnitude to it. One day I was going by, and this was at the basketball court on the corner. There were like a ton of kids out. They were super loud, tons of basketball, all kinds of stuff. And I was like, no, I'm in a hurry. I want to get home. I don't want to have a basketball thrown at her. I don't want to have to deal with 60 kids. I
Yeah.
had these like assumptions about what was going to happen as I rode up. And even though they'd be sweet, like the kids would just be interested, I was like, I don't have time for this. I'm in a rush. As we came up, everybody went silent. There was like a hush as I approached. Like you heard a basketball be like, dun, 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 dun. And like everybody just kind of awestruck because she's so strange looking. I mean, it's like, I don't know, there's something fun. And then they slowly approached silently, all the kids, and were like really delicate and really sweet. And we met another little girl named Egypt that day. One of the boys goes, my sister's name is Egypt. And he went and got her. And like Egypt met Egypt. And it was just, then I was like, had time. I was like, what am I in such a rush for? It was like so beautiful. But
Oh, that makes me so happy. Can you tell everybody, like, good segment, like what your plans are with all this now? And just, this is just your lifestyle. This is just bringing what you love into your dwelling and then taking her out for a ride and taking her out for exercise. And then you're coming across these magical gatherings and also doing stuff for the community. So, what what has that turned into for you and where are you going with this? I know you have plans and have actually started.
yeah, it's interesting. I guess I'm sort of figuring that out still too. And we had been letting them out on the corner more and more. We have a fence problem now, but we had been letting them out on the corner. And people too on the corner had a nice opportunity when I wasn't there, so they could interact with the animals on their own terms, and like not have a human intermediary. They don't have to like deal with me or worry about being seen or a reaction. So that was a piece that I liked about it too, is like our whole corner became transformed by just like this pastoral scene. So I'm not sure what we're doing with it, and especially now that we're still in quarantine.
Yeah.
um, like we're not doing pony rides the way that we used to be doing. We're not going to parties because they're not happening. We probably wouldn't even if they were happening.
Yeah.
In this state of court, it's really hard with
Yeah.
children to like keep masks on. I'll be like, put your mask up, put your mask up, put your mask over your mouth,
Yeah.
like, um, so right now I'm not sure what that will look like. We started a nonprofit called Chicago Rewilding Society. And the mission is basically just like we're dedicated to bringing plants and animals to the west side of Chicago. We believe that interacting with animals is inherently therapeutic. It's inherently community building. And so we're trying to, what's that?
I said it absolutely is.
It is, right? Even like walking out with the dogs, it's amazing. Like people that might not otherwise talk to me or I don't know what. Then suddenly we're talking about dogs for like 45 minutes. And there's like this shared, really tender, special place that I feel like animals bring out like the absolute best in everybody.
Mm-hmm. We wouldn't be here talking to each other without them.
Right? Yeah, that's, yeah.
Yeah, it's a sense of community, and I think that common love for animals is a characteristic amongst good people. Isn't there a quote that it's like if you can show kindness to something that can do absolutely, I mean, yes, an animal does much for us because it gives us love and affection, but like to do good to something you cannot expect to receive something back from, like a child or an animal, like that is a quality of a good person to the core. And I think that's amazing for the community, especially for people who are not used to urban settings and just have not been out enough and don't have perspective. And if they're basing their perspective off of, the media or the news right now, which is just not a good place to gain perspective, or like media culture, and have not just been in the urban environment for themselves to gain perspective for themselves with an open mind and an open heart. I mean, I think that worlds need to be blended, and that's a good way to start over something that is just a good heartwarming place. You get what I'm trying to get at? It's hard to describe. Like animals can do that because it can bridge suburban or rural environment into an urban setting, and an urban setting can benefit from it so much, and then people in other like suburban or rural areas can use that bridge to find out that we're all human, we're not that different. It doesn't matter where you live, it doesn't matter where you're from, there is some common ground always somewhere.
And I think part of the work too is that it is inherently political, right? So like even just like anybody working with animals, I think is inherently political, right? Just like especially as everything becomes more and more technology focused, like the idea that we would even want to work with horses, even though, especially as like a performing artist, right? Like not that they're props, but to have a choice of like, instead of having a simple prop that you can ship around and doesn't really cost anything, to like have this commitment to a beast and something like so labor heavy, right? Like that this relationship is so important, right? That is worth maintaining, that is worth the burden, that is worth. So I feel like that's one level of like almost like an anti-virtual, not like anti-technological, but just like a respect for the physical realms that I feel like is inherently political. And then like other levels around here that I feel like are inherently political too is just like challenging the assumption that this would be abusive. I think, animal care and control came out because the train comes behind our house. So I think people saw, a horse in a yard in the city in that kind of neighborhood. Or like even my idea of being like, she's not going to have enough here. It's not enough. My insecurities around that. I think even challenging that assumption of like, perhaps in the suburbs, there's this illusion of more space, or there's this, but really the idea is that there's more money surrounding it, right? And like having more money surrounding a horse doesn't make for a better environment.
Ownership.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, or like better quality of life. So like that feels inherently political too. And I guess the cross-pollination of spaces is interesting, right? So for people for the suburbs to be coming here, I was teaching yoga classes with the goats, and that brought like
Yeah, she does
30 to,
goat yoga, guys.
and it's really fun. We haven't done it this year at all too for like the same reasons, but we haven't done it.
Once we can. It's
It's
hard to
really
plan right now, but
fun. It's really fun. But people sometimes are like, this, I was uncomfortable with this neighborhood, da, 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 da. And I guess I prefer people um, expressing when that they're uncomfortable, because then it opens up a conversation and you're able to have a dialogue.
mhm.
And I think people should be uncomfortable with neighborhoods to a certain extent too, right? Like I think there should be an acknowledgement that like huge inequities and like wealth should make you uncomfortable, right? And like that, to need to confront maybe something that you don't like. This is what you were saying. If you don't always see it, like to need to confront something, where it's like, yeah, that should make you uncomfortable. Like people, there's broken glass everywhere. Like, yeah, it should make you uncomfortable that like there's contaminants constantly coming off of the train line, and that shit wouldn't fly in Lincoln Park, or similarly in Chicago, they closed this like metal shredding facility in Lincoln Park, and they want to put it on the southeast side. And like that type of environmental racism or environmental classism, I feel like inherently this is what we're challenging too, right? Of like, it's important for us to create sustainable, beautiful spaces around us wherever we are, regardless of money, essentially. But
Right.
like it does take money to like create and do, but like that is all part of the conversation. And I think that's really interesting. And I really love that my neighborhood is like open to maybe the weirdness and cultural strangeness of what I'm bringing in. And I really love that when people from outside, like the suburbs, are coming in, a lot of them are able to have some flexibility in their perspective or like curiosity.
Heck yeah. I had just a super enlightening experience visiting you because what it was the 5th of July. So there had been a little bit of partying going on, and your neighbors came out and said hi and said, "Hey, we're going to go pick up trash." Like, what? I mean, a neighbor who wants to take care of their neighborhood
Mm-hmm.
is right next door to you, and then you're the neighbor who wants to bring in like animals and share that with people and enlighten their day. And I don't know what your other neighbors do, but I mean, it's amazing. Everyone's bringing something, and it's starting within the inside for, with the
Mm-hmm.
people, to the people, not necessarily what, you know, the mayor or something is going to do for you guys. You guys are just doing it for yourself. And I get that, like that political thing with zoning, because when we were kind of house hunting here, it's like, you need 5 acres for a horse. It's like, that's a lot. Like, that is a lot. And then you look at 5 acre parcels, and only 2 acres are fenced.
Mm-hmm.
And that's still like, that's good. You'll still have to do some mowing with that. And then
Mm-hmm.
the rest of your lot, I'm like, this is all yard that I need to like mow now because it's not actually part of where the horses would live. But if we found like a 3 acre parcel, like, you know,
It wouldn't cut it.
it wouldn't cut it. The township is against it. It's like,
Mm.
but that's more than what was fenced at the other places. And it's just all the zoning is just pretty much all political. It's not, just trying to keep things separate and cutting people off for reasons that are not hurting anybody.
Mm-hmm.
But it's been tough.
It's sort of optics too, because like if you go out here to like any of like the wealthy North Shore suburbs, the average isn't 5 acres a horse. Like they don't each have that.
Oh no, if you go
No
to a
way.
riding stable, they're in stalls.
Yeah,
They're
and
on
that doesn't even
site.
come into question. I feel like that it's
No.
not like this is you know, even though I would definitely, if people keep their horses in stalls, that's cool too. I'm not out for anybody. I'm not coming to get any, I'm not
Yeah.
trolling
But
other
just
people.
using that though as an argument for, disliking something that you have, you I feel like that's not on the table given that, it's not really an issue if you're not in a different, it's not really an issue if
Mm-hmm.
you're in a different community.
Mm-hmm.
If you're out in the suburbs and you find a big stable, but the horse is given less space than what you're giving your horses right now. It's like, okay, then why is this on the table? There's other like hidden agendas and hidden reasons behind like the prejudice with that.
And I would argue that, because my horses can freely go inside and out, that's part of why a lot of it is relational work, but part of it is that they can freely move. And I would argue that that's why they don't have as many vices, and why they're mentally stable, and why I still feel insecure where I'm like, am I doing enough? Is this right? I think we have this as like animal owners. I have this with my dogs too. Like, is this enough? Are they happy? But are they really? Is this, you know? And
But you love them. You can tell.
well, and I'd like to think that if they weren't doing well, it would start to express itself in certain like behavioral.
Or
Yeah.
even better. I got your horses did better for the dentist than mine did.
The fact that they did well for the dentist, I was like, I think we're okay then. I think they're doing all right. They
Yeah,
stand
sure,
for
yeah.
they do the things with me. So I was like, I'd like to think that if they weren't doing well, there'd be some,
They'd let you know.
something. Yeah.
Yeah, they like it. They like
I like it.
being in the city. I mean, but that's historically that's what we had, right? We were carting horses up and going through the cities with our carts. If you go down to New Orleans, they still have like carriageways between all the buildings and then space that's like hidden back there, and that's where you would keep your horses in your carriage while you were like in your house. I mean that used to be a thing.
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Yeah, we've like evolved in tandem with horses, right? They've like shaped humanity. They've like shaped our culture. And then for them to almost disappear as something that's like just for the elite or somewhere very far away in the country, or like to distance ourselves more and more from them, it's like, well, that's maybe necessary, but we don't have to do it 100%. They don't have to just be eliminated. Like,
No, they don't. We should be able to keep the tradition going. I mean, even with circus.
mm-hmm.
Circus started because of horses.
Mm-hmm.
And now we got places advertising animal free shows, and it's like, we got the reason the circus is in a circle was because of the horse acts.
Do you encounter that? Like, I felt for a long time that animals in the circus, it was just, gonna die. It just felt so remarkably unpopular, where it felt like an easy way for people to say, I love animals, so I don't support animals in the circus. Like, well, I don't really understand the connection between those two things. Like, I don't understand how it can be inherently that an animal is abused because it's like a performing arts partner.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely depends on who owns the horse, but it's the
Mm-hmm.
same as parenting. There's good parents, there's bad parents. There's good horse owners, there's bad horse owners. But if we just look at the job itself in the circus, it's like, and my horse worked like a 5 to 7 minute act, and he traded off being in the ring with, 1 to 3 other horses. Like when you compare that to horse racing or just, ponying horses all day, being at a rodeo all day, like the horses in the circus, their workload physically is not heavy.
Mm-hmm.
Not heavy. And I think that's just a lack of education on part of anyone assuming that putting the label circus with animal automatically is negative. It's like, you need to do just like, horse urban environment is negative. No,
Mm-hmm.
come. I would, whenever we were at the circus, we would want people to come check it out. If you have questions,
Mm-hmm.
let us know. And so I've heard from other animal owners, especially exotic animals, that when public would start to backlash a bit, the owners would just keep really calm and be like, do you have questions? Come on back.
Mm-hmm.
Come back. We'll answer it for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I think that's with anything, especially in politics these days. It's like, you have questions. Like, I'm not going to fight back. If I fight back, I know you're just going to spit negativity back at me and you're just going to put the boxing gloves up. But if you don't know something, ask. We'll answer. And being open for a conversation, And people did take tours of the circus, take tours of the back lot where the horses were and everything, saw how good they look, how fat they were. I got plenty of compliments that I would pet my horse and give him treats, you know, in front of audiences during an act. And then they would walk away and be like, okay, this is cool. And would actually change their view and their opinion once they got that conversation and were open to it. So that's like anything, though, I feel like these
Mhm.
days.
I guess that's cool. I hadn't thought about that, like the transparency being important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We would, at least last year, what I can speak of with my girls, like we would be transparent. You can see where our horses were living. You could see what their conditions were. And we had no problem answering questions to anyone who came up with questions.
Hmm.
That's how you spread the love. It's okay.
Yeah, that's cool. I think sometimes I get like worked up at the idea of a potential question that could come up that I'm like almost closed off to all of it. I'm like, what is that about? You know, like I'm like arguing illusions before they materialize. And I like that what you're saying. Just saying, like if you're open to it, you can just like address it, make a safe space even for that question, make a safe space for that, you know.
Oh yeah,
Cool.
absolutely. Cool. Well, thank you so much. And I know that, you know, Egypt coming to your property was a recent thing, like this year, correct? Or it
Hmm.
was last year. Yeah.
She came at the end of January here.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Um, I want to close with talking about where it's going. And I know right now is not the time to make plans. It's such a hard time to make plans, and plans that everyone, even myself, were making. I mean, my plans for 2020 have changed drastically, and a lot of things got canceled. But do you, even at the stages you are at with your nonprofit, do you would like to invite anybody to, if they have interest in what you're doing, to maybe follow your Instagram and start a conversation with you and see how they can get involved or kind of help you along the process?
Sure. I don't gotta look up our Instagram. I don't know what it Molly started our Instagram for me.
Really?
Yeah.
Yay.
So, but I gotta tend to it. It needs tending. I have to find
It's
it.
okay. In the first episode as well, I mentioned that Matt reminded me this year, like it's okay to be where you're at, and it's okay to have not been where you are, and just to pause, and you know things will pick up again.
We got it. It's Chicago
Yeah.
Rewilding Society.
All right.
We're on
So you
Instagram as
guys,
Chicago Rewilding Society.
cool.
We have a
Let's
website, chicagorewilding.society.org. It's a .org because we're an org,
perfect.
but it's,
Yes.
you know, they're both kind of half
Congrats.
baked. We're working on it. If anyone,
Yeah, it's a work in process. That's all. But that's, you know, if someone sees and appreciates the vision too, that's all that matters yet. It doesn't have to be something big and spectacular yet. Same with me.
well, what
I
I'm
get two
hoping,
viewers on YouTube. I'm like, yeah, gotta start somewhere.
my friends watched it. Like, um,
Oh,
we with the Rewilding Society, we're hoping what we had been talking about doing is trying to link up with Chicago public schools and then either have field trips come here or go to various Chicago public schools. Right now, in like virtual times, like no one's going to school. I don't know.
mhm.
It could potentially be. I don't know how that would look. Um, but that was our thought, right? So that we could do either I would go there and I could, you know, bring a co-teacher. We could do like set up fencing and have like a week of units of like we could talk about life cycles, we could talk about waste management, or just do something as simple as like goat yoga with the kids, where it's like, what are simple mindfulness practices that we can do? How does it feel right now to touch other animals? Why, as we as mammals, do we feel a certain type of way when we touch other mammals? You know, what unites us all as mammals? What
That's
talk about
amazing.
stuff like that? It could be really cool. Like that. I think that that could be interesting. I like doing it similar to what I do with adults. So we would do that with kids. I think it's important to continue doing work with adults too, because I feel like so many programs are really, really child focused, and there becomes less and less resources. So it can feel like really alienating as an adult, especially a sensitive
Mhm.
adult. I feel like I like horses too. I like,
Yeah.
goats too. And a lot of people, when I'm going around, approach me and they say, when I was a teenager, I had issues with, and probably still do, right? For so many people, like self harm or like emotional regulation or whatever, and they were recommended to do equine assisted therapy. And they were afraid to do it then, but feel more open to do it now. So that's something I would be interested in doing, either one on one or in small groups. And so I've thought
Mhm.
about reaching out to there's like a women's shelter down the street, or there's like different centers nearby where they're opening up a couple new restorative justice courts in Chicago. One of them that's been open for about 3 years is not too far away. It's like 2 miles away. So maybe reaching out to them for both the victims and offenders, if that's something that they would be interested in doing. And I wouldn't do that. I would team up with someone that's like a mental health professional to help facilitate that. But like, that would be cool. I don't know. I'm still brainstorming of like, what can this look like now, right? Could we keep masks on, stay away from people? I'm not sure. You've frozen.
All right. So we were just gonna finish up too. Oh my God. Okay. So you're just talking about bringing the nonprofit and bringing those activities like goat yoga and the horse and the pony to schools, and being able to do that for adults as well.
Yeah. And like, if I want to team up with like mental health professionals to offer more like explicitly equine assisted therapy for people. But then I was sitting here thinking about it, and I was talking to Stefan about this, my partner, the other day. Sometimes I think there's like a push for something to like sound more official, or like we start to internally overthink it, where you're like, oh, I want it to have this narrative, or I want it to look like this and look like this. And then sometimes I'm like, what if I just want to like give away 1,000 pony rides? What if it was as simple as that? It would just be like, we did
Yeah.
1,000 pony rides this year, because that's probably about what we did last year, maybe more. And I was like,
My
that's
gosh,
cool, I
amazing.
like that. We just do a bunch of pony rides, like nothing more complicated about it.
Yeah.
um,
If anything, this year's taught me how to simplify.
mhm.
I think that's why I like doing the videos I've been doing and just talking about like cognition, equine cognition, and making it simple. I think like horse people make things way too complicated. And it's okay. It can be simple. It's working with your horse. What do you want to do? Let's get it
Mhm.
done.
Mhm. Yeah, it's funny. I've had that with you where you're like, break it down into these parts and then think about these parts that way. And I'll be like, like it feels so obvious when I'm not doing it. And then I do it like, then probably Egypt's like, thank God.
No, she's great. You do such a good job with her. And I want to hopefully get some clips throughout the video of like the places you go with her, and she's just so chill about the settings that she's in, and she's great.
She's cool.
She's a good
I
bird.
You were talking about this with like obedience work. I think you said something, or I don't know what you call it for horses, but I had that theory for dogs of people that do like tricks or sort of higher end things with their dogs, but then their dogs lack all basic obedience work, so they can't safely
Mm.
take their dog out with them into the world, right? Because the dog isn't equipped to like safely handle the human's world. The dog's nervous, it's not trustworthy, it's whatever, and it lacks all this basic obedience. And then its life gets like smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And I feel like for the horses, like if I had to prioritize one thing, it would be like, yeah, like basic. I don't know what I guess not. Is it obedience work with horses?
You could call it that. A lot of people will call it groundwork, and that's like their horse term. It's calling it groundwork. I think it's groundwork is very similar to obedience, just knowing how to move your dog and staying in a nice distance with a nice leash, like loose leash with no tension on it.
Yeah.
We could call it obedience. We could call it groundwork. I call it just the basics and boundaries. And it's so interesting too because Like even the work of Frederick Piaget, the guy who started Cavalia and does all of that, Liberty, his wife, Magali, does like high, like high end competition, like high level dressage. And then she'll go and take her bridle off and do that same dressage test, just the same without a bridle on. And they are very much about, the horse has the ability to say no and this and this and this, but they also have boundaries. You can't, you can say no if you want to have low energy that day. We can work with low energy. If you want to have high energy that day, we can work with high energy. We can make the horse's ideas our ideas and work together, but there are still boundaries, because it's like 1,000-pound animal. In order for me to properly take care of it and put up my half of the bargain, provide you with vet care and nutrition and shelter and all this stuff, like you're just going to have to stop when I ask you to stop so that a vet can look at you, and you're going to have to stand still while we give you a shot and all that stuff. So I also think it's just like that half of the horse's bargain so I can do my half and take care of you. You have to, participate so that I can take care of you. And you have to not run me over, and you can't bite the other horses while we're working together as a group. There's just like that set of boundaries. I don't know what we can call it, but I know what you mean. I know what you're talking about.
It's really beautiful. And like all these concepts, I feel like the dovetailing like any type of work with animals to like any type of mental health, there is so much of this overlap, right? Of like, if we have to explicitly talk about boundaries when it has to do with a 1,000-pound animal, and like we have to talk about like clarity within communication, right? Or we have to talk like sort of, but they're not simple principles, right? Because it's something that like we all need work with all the time, is like like boundary work, right? And like, yeah, like they make it immediate and like lay it bare, and it's really interesting.
Yeah, like even for ourselves and like what's going on with, the politics in the country, like where are the boundaries? Where do we now just need to take care of ourselves versus what is the government's job, or what is their part of their half of the deal and taking care of it, and where are those boundaries lacking? Who's not holding up their half of the deal? Like I feel like it's the same way with just working like one-on-one, you and a horse. Like where is someone in the relationship not keeping their part with it? Oh, we could go on forever. And I think like even just saying like pony rides for the community, I think there's so much more like that. You can go down the rabbit hole and it can be so much deeper in that as to what you're actually offering than just that. But it is just that. But it gives so much more. Yeah. There's even a group up here. She has a nonprofit and she works a lot in like the Latino community, and she does liberty work and teaches them like to stand their ground with a 1,000-pound animal. And it's like stand your ground and like protest and don't let instead of shying back and letting someone get to you about who you are, just like more like standing your ground. And if you stand your ground and stand up, you can be more respected and you can be heard. And I think there's so much we can go with that.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess even like between us and 1,000-pound animals, like they're really powerful, and it is important to remember. And then you're like, so are we. Yeah. Us like 150-pound animals or whatever. We're like,
watch out.
Not to be reckoned with.
Like, you're not gonna step on me.
Especially when there's many of us.
Oh yeah. See, exactly. That's what's happening in the world.
A super majority of,
Heck yeah. Last thing I want to talk about is those awesome tarot readings you were doing during that started in like June, right? May or June.
Yeah.
So like at the brink of like the Black Lives Matter. And can you tell us what I love it. I did a tarot reading and I got a video of Egypt straight up like grabbing the card off the table with her mouth. Like she loves it. She's so into it.
They like it. They like it a lot. I had so much fun with that too, and they had a good time with it. And I also like I feel like having the horses there as oracles too makes it really special. And it like adds just like the synchronicity and randomness of it. It's not like I'm trying to pull a certain card. She's not trying. We did that through this organization did a tarot-thon for Black Lives, so it was raising funds specifically for
oh my goodness.
Mostly
And then we have the Hierophant.
female identifying or femme or trans Black groups specifically involved in, because it wasn't for Black Lives Matter specifically, because they had raised a lot of funds.
Sure.
They had already raised a lot of funds. So it was like affiliated organizations that hadn't raised as many funds. And then we did it again for COVID-19 relief. And that was for mostly Black and Indigenous communities that had been disproportionately affected by COVID-19. And so that, I didn't organize it, someone else did, but it raised a bunch of money. So that was really cool. Yeah. And it was a nice, so I liked being able to participate in that way for like groups that I support. And also it was a nice way to offer something that otherwise seemed so silly, like way too silly to offer. But I really enjoyed doing it, and it like allowed people to ask questions that I think were vulnerable and might have felt too strange to ask just to me, or just to me pulling tarot even. But if it's me and tarot and Egypt and the goats and Clover, it became a little bit more of a safe space. And then I don't know, it was a really nice opportunity to explore small issues with people, but through a different perspective and through a different lens. And then we're talking about like stories or myth or imagination, and she's nickering again. I can hear.
I heard that. Oh no, that's so amazing. I'm smiling so much because it's like you're giving so much to your community, and it's awesome.
I want to keep doing pony tarot. I was like, should I set up shop on the corner and just like anybody coming by being like, need guidance, need clarity? Like, we'll pick a card, any card. Horse is here to interpret it.
I would trust advice from like a gypsy tarot in downtown Chicago with ponies and goats than probably a lot of other places I would ask for it. No, seriously.
Yeah.
Like, this is the real stuff.
And I think there's something that like, even if you didn't want to participate in it, like let's say people came up because they were just like, I wanted to take a photo with this animal, but they're like, all right, well, I'll try this thing. I do think then there's like an earnestness or it resonates in a way that I think is a little bit beyond. It feels special, right? I guess that's why it feels special, and it feels.
Well, everybody has their thing, and like what, their job here on Earth is. And it's interesting because I fight it a lot. I fight mine. Like it is second nature for me to be able to do some research and apply it and spit it back to people in using words in a way that they can understand and carry it with them. And that is second nature for me. So I don't feel like I'm working. And now I've just recently accepted that. I'm like, this is what I do. This is just like what I'm designed to do. So if mine is like research based, spitting it back, and you have like that tarot connection and you can help people and it's like second nature to you, and I mean, and you're good at it and you're interested in it. I saw all your books when I was at your house. It was amazing. And it doesn't feel like you're doing much because it's just like what you do, but it's what you're supposed to do. Like, yeah, it's your calling, and do it, go for it.
I think it is. And I wonder if that's part of it with the circus too. Like what's cool about the circus is it is storytelling, and you do create this alternate world, right? Like when I watch your act, it's like it's transcendent, right? Yeah. You just watch this and you're like, that's possible. What's happening? This is so in my mind. And I think there is like any kind of strange space with animals, or like storytelling with animals, or thought exploration with it. If you're able to create enough of a container for people to go with you there, I think that's what I liked about circus and working with the circus, was like that magic. And I feel like it's the same right now with the animals. And it might be as simple as pony tarot or 1,000 pony rides or whatever, but it's like magic is medicine. Magic is important. Like imagination is important to us. And like that, I think is what I'm embracing more. Like you're that sort of simplicity where you're like, well, I don't know, anyone could do that. And like, well, that's okay. They're not, or that's okay. Two
Yeah.
people can do it. There could be 100 of us doing it. It's okay.
Yeah. What I realized is that like your work and your calling doesn't have to be hard. I always
Mhm.
thought like working had to be like super difficult and it couldn't be something I was interested in. Like I thought my interests were my interests and my gifts were my gifts
Mhm.
and my passions were my passions and then my work was my work and that's what I need to make money and live and be
Mhm.
miserable.
Mhm.
That's not true. That's not true. And honestly, sometimes like there's something guiding me away from it because every time I try to like get a normal job, it doesn't work out, doesn't fall apart. And then like the circus was honestly not even something that worked I worked hard on my tricks, but not tunnel vision into an end goal of performing it. That's just how it manifested.
Mhm.
And being able to meet people like you and talk about all this cool stuff, that's just kind of and like the clinics and everything, that's just how it manifested, and I wasn't tunnel vision into some end goal. So I think it's
Mhm.
like do what you're good at, do what you love, and then let it let it go. It'll come back. Like
Mhm.
let it go in the universe. It'll come back into some kind of physical form that maybe not quite what you thought it would be, but where you're supposed to be. So the fact that you're doing what you're doing and have done what you've done, and now you had a dream as a little girl of your horses in your yard in Chicago, and they're here, and you're making something of it, and you've done all the work for your community, and like all those tarot readings and how much money that raised, it's working. It's working for you.
It's cool.
Embrace it. Embrace the uniqueness. That's why I knew that I wanted to interview you right away. Plus, you're good to listen to. Like I can, if you were to read me, my reading, your voice, I'll listen to anything you say. You can tell me I'm doing everything wrong. I'll be like, she right. Something about your voice.
Cool. Well, I was delighted when you came over and you were like, they look happy, they look healthy, they look great. I was like, well, that means the world to me. So,
Yeah, they do. Well, I think we'll end this. I think we got plenty, and I can't wait to share it. So thank you so much, and I'll catch you next time.
all right. See you.
Bye.